Welcome, everyone, and good evening. My name is Tommy Messenger, and I'm one of the founders of K-12 Impact, and actually a former educator myself as well. And we're really glad that you're here tonight with us. So thank you for joining us for tonight's webinar, Leveraging Your K-12 Experience to Transition into EdTech, a conversation designed to help educators better understand how hiring teams actually evaluate their experience and how to communicate that value clearly. So really, tonight's goal is simple. We want to help you understand how things look from the hiring lens and translate your background into language, signals, and stories recruiters actually value in 2026. And so if you're tuning in, we want this to be interactive, so feel free to drop your questions below. You'll see the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. So please throw your questions in and we will get to those. We have a list of questions we want to cover, but we want to also respond to your guys' questions. So we're joined here tonight by Nikki Ralston, president and owner of Flagstaff Ed, a nationally recognized executive recruiting firm specializing in the education market. Nikki works closely with EdTech companies, hiring teams across the country, placing leaders in roles spanning sales, customer success, implementation, and beyond. So Nikki, thank you so much for being here tonight, and how are you doing?
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm getting over a little cold, but yeah, I'm super excited about tonight's conversation. So we're glad to have you on.
Glad you're feeling better.
Exactly. So let's start here. Is in kind of layman's terms, what is a recruiter? What do recruiters do? Kind of even the difference between a recruiter. Is there a difference between a recruiter and executive recruiter? Who do you work with? Kind of just give us the lay of the land when it comes to recruiting.
Not really a whole lot of difference in the two different terms, and a lot of folks will refer to us as headhunters. I'm an analogy person, so you'll hear me call us matchmakers because I like to believe that at the end of the day, we're really connecting good companies with candidates. And if you are in your dream job or you're working with a company that really values you and values your skills, then you're going to be a better producer. Happy people work harder, making happier companies and better service for your clients. And to answer your other question, who do we work with on the hiring side? All sorts of folks, talent acquisition, other recruiters on the company side, hiring managers and RVPs, senior leaders, et cetera.
Do you really connect the company, whether it's their TA team, talent acquisition team, their hiring team, and also people looking for jobs? Is that correct?
That's 100% correct. Yep.
Okay, I got it. I mastered it. So if someone's, let's say they're a classroom teacher, they're an administrator, district leader, and they're just starting to think about transitioning out of their current role, what are kind of the first couple things they should be thinking about, maybe even doing? Like, where kind of do they get started?
Absolutely. I would say the first place to start is to ask yourself a few questions. And this is regardless of what type of role you're in now. The first thing I ask people is, what do you want to do when you grow up? What do you want to be next? Design it for yourself, write some things down, and then go out there and see if that exists. And if not, come close to it. Maybe you have to have a couple conversations with people at companies that you want to focus on. If you're an educator, maybe there's an organization that you really like working with XYZ type of solution in your classroom. And so that really brings out your passion. Then start doing some research and talking to the folks that work for those companies when they come into your district and do your training. I would start there, along with doing some additional research, maybe having some conversation with folks like myself to feel out the market a little bit.
That's great advice. I think sometimes the tough thing with transitioning out of education is they're dealing with burnout, right? They're kind of at the end of like, I'm ready to be done. But that's great advice that you do, rather than just jump to the next thing, you're slowing down and really doing your research, figuring out why. Like, have you seen kind of that trend of people leaving because they're burnt out? And how do people, have you navigated with people as they transition out of the classroom?
We do see that more so people that are burnt out from the classroom setting, but still want to make an impact. So if you went into education for a reason, because you want to make a difference. So those folks, a lot of them, I'll say, again, what do you want to do? And when you can go out there and take that impact that you are making on students and instead translate it to the district leaders and instead be a customer support or trainer, then maybe that passion comes back. Now, if you're completely burned out, please do yourself a favor and find something else. But if it's just burnout on the classroom setting because you've got critics from every direction, look at impacting education from a different standpoint.
Yeah, I love that because like your why doesn't necessarily need to change. Your what, like what you do, your role may change, but I love that you can still make an impact. You still transfer it from education just outside the classroom. So I love that you hit on that. Um, like educators feel like their experience may just be like I just know how to write lesson plans, or I just know how to grade, or all the little hats they wear. So how do recruiters like yourselves and hiring managers actually view teaching experience? Like how do you where's the value in that, and how do you see the value in that kind of transitioning outside the classroom?
Part of it is you have to toot your own horn. But this, as a mom and as a recruiter, both, this one kind of hits home because I always tell educators, and I have a lot of friends that are educators too. You're not just an educator. Again, you have critics from every direction. You're managing a classroom of, in today's environment, 25 plus kids, plus all the curriculum that are being thrown at your different direction, and likely managing, in a lot of cases, the folks we're talking to are the, lead math director, or they're the coach of the after school program, or the director of a theater program for the school. They're not that just educating is not enough, but usually there's more than just your 9 to 5 and then your classroom work after. There's also the added. So put that on your resume. Beef that up. Think about the fact that you're managing a classroom and you're also managing a lot of different personalities. And in today's environment, that's like managing people. Sometimes tiny people are harder than big people. So talk about that. And some hiring managers are still going to say, you know what, you don't have the direct experience in XYZ, but that's every environment. So take that and look at the next company that will value what you have.
100%. Yeah, I think to the point of I realize sometimes when you're in a room full of corporate whoever, sometimes they are just acting like my middle schoolers used to act. So I was like, all right, I know how to handle this.
My father-in-law was a poker room supervisor for years, and he would come home and say, "Oh my gosh, I wish these adults were kids because at least I could put them in the corner."
Yeah. No, and you realize a lot of skills transfer, and the situations are different, so you have to learn how to use those skills in a different setting, but they are similar skills and whatnot. So I appreciate you calling that out. And if you're just joining us, feel free the Q&A function is working, so it's down below. If you want to throw your questions in for Nikki, feel free we'd love to respond to your questions as we kind of work through this. You touched on that, but experience, right? You have experience in the classroom, right? Whatever that may be, project management, writing lessons or whatever. But also there's experience outside the classroom, whether you're volunteering, you coach your son's little league team or whatever it may be. How does that matter? And does it matter? And then how should you talk about that experience when it's not necessarily a professional setting? It may be coaching a team. How do you translate that experience in a meaningful way?
Certainly add it to your resume, and it definitely matters. All of those added things make a difference, and they should be on your resume, on a letter of intent, forefront when you're speaking to a recruiter or a talent agent, any hiring person on the team. They make a difference. It shows that you're organized, and it shows that you're dedicated, whether it's a theater group or working with like you said, your son's little league team, or project management and curriculum writing. There's things you can do in the district, out of the district. Maybe you're selling houses on the side because you really like sales, but you don't know how to make that transition, but you're still an educator because you're an educator at heart. Put those things on your resume because we're not going to know to ask you about them unless they're there. And then we'll touch on this a little bit, hopefully, but if we don't, remind me to talk about letters of intent that go with your resume, because a cover letter or a letter of intent can be so powerful if you're talking from a place of passion to even bring in those personal experiences that aren't necessarily professional.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that. And I see a question here that maybe relates to what you just brought up of someone just asked, how should educators describe their classroom leadership experience in a clear way that translates to hiring teams? And does that kind of connect to what you're saying about the letter intent? Like how do you do that in kind of a cover letter and whatnot?
I would definitely put it in a letter, a cover letter, a letter of intent. Just start from your place of what's drawing you to apply for that role or to reach out to that recruiter. Is it your passion for AI or just to get out of the classroom and work up from the customer success,
Mhm.
customer support training side? So take it from that standpoint first as you're doing your cover letter and your resume. But with your resume, translating your experience sometimes can be very tough because you're using one document that's 2 pages. So it's really hard to talk about what you've done. Focus on your accomplishments rather than your duties because education duties typically are standard. Now, if you have anything that stands out, put that on there because if it's anything out of the realm of normal teaching, then you want to throw that in there. Of course, if it relates to the role, if it's curriculum writing, put your curriculum writing
Yeah.
experience on there. But really draw on and bullet point the things that you want to be seen, which are going to be your accomplishments.
Okay. I like that. Yeah, highlighting the accomplishments, like what you've done. I think that's key. So even do you find that like putting that into some of the language of the job they're looking for? Like if I'm looking to for a sales role in an EdTech company, I should kind of use the verbiage and the words as I talk about my education experience that sales teams use. Is
You
that a
should.
helpful tactic? Okay.
You should. And if you're looking for a sales role and you're an educator and you're maybe thinking about customer success too, have 2 resumes. One that really highlights, don't take your sales stuff off your customer success stuff, but highlight the training, highlight the things you've done in the district that would benefit the training or the customer success role more so than the sales and vice versa.
No, that's helpful. Another question just popped up, and I'll put it up here. Um, what sort of roles do teachers and administrators fit in when looking at an ed tech company? So, like, what may be a natural fit when it comes to ed tech?
I'm always going to go back to the passion, but because you can't just go do something that you don't love.
Yeah.
So if you love to sell, then you should be selling. But that's a hard transition to jump right into. So usually I say start with something like a training, like a customer success or a customer support, and start with something that you've worked with. So if you've
Mm,
worked with XYZ curriculum and you love that product and you know it from inside and out, start with that company or the competitors or similar companies that you've worked with because you know it well enough to go talk about it. Usually, when it's something that you've worked with, you can then translate into that role a little bit smoother and it's easier to talk the talk with the hiring managers.
100%. I think that goes back to what you said earlier, doing your research and really slowing down to understand, like, what's my why again? Why did I get in this? What am I
Mhm.
passionate about? And that, like you said, that's going to fuel what you get into next. This question relates to the one you just answered. So I'll put it up here. So in that sense, like because educators have maybe worked with this, tool before or this resource, like and kind of understand the not just like different tools, but they understand how schools work, how education works, how school calendars work. Do you find that they have a leg up in the recruiting process, due to all those things, their credibility, and likewise, where do they not have an advantage? So where do they have an advantage, and where do they not have an advantage?
You have an advantage for sure with the products that you've used and on those roles that we were just discussing, the customer success and implementation roles, more so than you wouldn't have as much of an advantage on a sales role unless you've sold. Because
Mm,
sales is very much prove to me you can do it before you've done it. It's one of those hiring settings like we want to see your quota even though you've never sold before. So sales is a little bit different. It's a little bit easier to transition into that if you're already within an organization. So for an educator, yes, you have a leg up with most companies. I would say like 95% of companies will say we want an educator, even if you haven't used the solution. You know how a district works, like you mentioned, Tommy, how
Yeah.
The students are thinking what the challenges are for those educators every day. And so you can walk in and say, I get you. I understand what you're
Yeah.
going through because I was just doing that.
Yeah. Now I would find when, you know, start of school is happening, you have your professional development days, the people presenting and talking about the new things whatever we're using that year. I knew that they were a former teacher, like if they had the empathy and understood like we were coming in, we were trying to prepare our classrooms versus the people who, didn't necessarily have that understanding. So that makes sense to what you said there. Um, and then um, when let's transition to talk about LinkedIn. Like I remember when I was in the classroom, I'd get all the, you have a connection, so and so wants to connect with you, and I just kind of avoided LinkedIn. And I think sometimes a lot of educators maybe do that because they don't see the, in the classroom setting, you're like, oh, what's the value of LinkedIn? But in kind of simple terms, like what is LinkedIn? What is it used for? And kind of how is it different than like other social media platforms that people may be on, like Instagram or Facebook or things like that?
Oh my God, please don't treat it like Facebook and Instagram. It's a recruiter's nightmare. Feel free to be Facebook, Instagram, but make sure you put it on private settings. Do whatever you want. Just be careful. It's private so that your future employers can't see anything. But LinkedIn is similar in that it is meant to connect a community, lots of communities.
Yeah.
I love LinkedIn in the sense that I communicate with a lot of folks only on LinkedIn. They'll message me, hey, Nikki, blah, blah, blah. And then we have a phone call. So it is a good place to learn, especially as an educator, about solutions, about types of company roles, because there's different titles for multiple roles that mean the same thing. And so the more you look at a different company, you're like, what does this mean? Oh, that means what this means at this company. You can kind of see what the structures are within organizations on LinkedIn. And as an educator, you should definitely use it, like I said, to learn, but also to showcase your own skills. If you're going to start looking for a role, you definitely want to put your resume out there. You don't have to put the big I'm looking for a new role so that way everyone in your district doesn't know, but you can still beef up your LinkedIn and even use it as a way to just learn about social media, because there's a lot of valuable information, and this education community is very tight knit. So there's a lot of valuable information in there.
No, that's super helpful. Yeah, I think it is like LinkedIn. There's a professional aspect to it, so you don't want to treat it like you said, like other platforms too. And but yeah, like using it for the research side, right? Like researching and understanding, learning, but also a way to promote your own personal brand, right? Yourself in that regards.
Absolutely.
And so like, let's say teacher or district leader is looking to transition out of education, and what are some of the first things they should do to optimize their LinkedIn? Like what are kind of like, if they haven't touched it in a couple of years, maybe their profile pictures, all that stuff is kind of outdated. What are the first things they should kind of tackle?
Definitely update your picture. And first of all, it gives everybody in your network a notification that you updated things. So the more you update, the more your network sees that. It's a great thing. Not a bad thing if you're trying to get noticed. Also, when you update things on there, it reminds you of what you've done. So go in there when you get a new review and you went up for Teacher of the Year, and put that in there. Even if you didn't win, you were a nominee for Teacher of the Year for the state of Arkansas. Put the accomplishments in there, because if you're anything like me, you forgot what you ate for lunch yesterday, let alone putting things on your resume or on your LinkedIn that you said you were going to add. So don't forget to go brag about yourself. And I look at LinkedIn and I see if I want to scroll. So as a hiring manager, as a recruiter, I look at your LinkedIn and I'm like, Tommy, did you give me information to look further? Did you brag enough to where I want to keep looking? And if so, then you're doing your job right. So bullet points are easier to read. Put stuff like that on there. Those are the first things I would tackle and make sure it's all at the forefront, at the top, all those accomplishments.
No, that's super helpful. And if you're just joining us, feel free to throw your questions in the Q&A. We have a couple in line we'll get to. But kind of from your perspective, so it kind of takes behind the curtain, like what are the things you look for and stand out to you in a positive but also a negative way when it comes to looking at someone's LinkedIn?
Definitely, if it's not filled in, that's a negative thing. If there's like no information or I have to guess what the heck you did, please don't make me do that. I won't keep looking. If you know, definitely stay active on there. Don't be proactively, aggressively every day. Hey, here's a picture of me in my bathroom because nobody cares. Nobody
Yeah.
cares. We want to know about your work stuff. Like, I'm at a conference, come meet me, come check out,
Hmm.
blah, blah, blah. I want to see XYZ product. Things that you've done, put that on there. Brag about your accomplishments. Use it again as research. Don't use it as your social media extension to the world. Get on your Snapchat and talk to your friends that way.
Yeah,
so
you gotta, nope, that's good.
So bragging, brag about yourself, but make sure it's all professional. That's the
Yeah,
biggest thing with LinkedIn. If I see otherwise, I usually am like, please don't.
yeah. Maybe, I don't know the term for that. Professional bragging is what
Yes,
we'll coin it.
I
Professional
like it.
bragging. A couple questions that just popped in that I want to address is, if an educator is, they're listening today and they wanted to, I'll put it up here actually. So if an educator is listening today, wants to make themselves significantly more competitive in the next 90 days, what would you recommend they focus on first?
Dang, that's a good question. I like it. Well, you started out right. You're thinking about it first. Definitely think about again what you want to do in the next role and start working towards that. So
Hmm.
I'm going to use the example of customer success because that's the easiest transition from educator into the technology side or this side, I'll say. And if you are looking at being a customer success or a trainer, I would start by looking at what that job looks like at the companies you want to look for. And then start adding things like communicating with your district within your district and maybe trying to be a peer leader or maybe reaching out to folks in that company that you have a really high interest in or a recruiter and saying, do you know somebody at XYZ company? How do I get in there? How do I get
Hmm.
information? And learn as much as you can. Be the squeaky wheel, but not the annoying squeaky wheel.
Yeah.
So be the one that reaches out and says, I want more information. I want to be a sponge. I want to learn. And take that and add to your resume as much as you can as far as learning. Take courses on their products if you
Hmm.
want. And even LinkedIn offers a lot of courses that are going to help you beef up your resume as an educator as well.
Yeah. I like what you said too, like starting to look for opportunities, like maybe in your own setting that relate to that role. I remember when I was transitioning out, I was an admin at that time, but I wanted to go into a training role. So I, you know, put a proposal together. Like I wanted to do a little training program, at my school. So then I could use that as an experience. So I
That's
like that you brought
perfect.
that up.
That's awesome.
Um, and then another question here that I'll throw up is, what skills are in high demand right now when it comes to client success or sales roles?
Oh man. You guys you're giving me some good ones here. Skills in high demand. I'll talk about sales and customer success because they're a little bit different, but similar. You're looking for knowledge. Knowledge is a big one, but how do you prove knowledge on a resume? That one's hard to talk about. But definitely as far as experience like organization, making certain that you understand the technology side of education right now and how AI can both benefit you and be the downfall in the customer success roles and in the sales roles both, because it doesn't matter what company, if you're working for an AI company or not, you're still impacted because some districts are saying, that's, we don't need you, we'll train ourselves by using Google. So
Yeah.
you still have to have a little bit of that perseverance that you have to have as an educator. You have to be have perseverance to be talking to the kids and your parents and etc. So utilize some of those skills are beneficial as well. Definitely on the technology side, a lot of the skills that you're using in the classroom with your students are going to be very translatable in a customer success role.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And you brought up AI, which I want to ask kind of a related question. That is, in that sense, like how can AI, let's say ChatGPT, like help you, as you're transitioning, like ways you can use it well, to like on your resume or whatever it may be. And what are some ways that you would say don't use AI for this? Needs to come from your own like what kind of pitfalls do you also see?
I, I can tell when someone writes a letter, a cover letter with AI or an email to me
Mm.
with AI. So don't not use it. I use it every day. I use AI like it's going out of style. I use it to talk to my family for crying out loud. Make this
Yeah,
sound nicer. But I I write what I want first, and then I put it in Chat GPT
Mm.
and say, please make this sound, better than what it would sound like coming out of my mouth. And
Yeah,
then I go in and still fix it to sound like Nikki so that it's
yeah,
not so changed that it's not me anymore. Because as soon as you're not authentically you, it changes the entire vibe of everything. So use AI for your resume,
yeah,
use it for your cover letter, but start with your information first and make sure you go back and make it you again.
yeah. I think that's key because I think the one advantage you have over any other person is you, right? Like, and you
Mhm.
can't let AI take that out of your process, right? Like, if it doesn't sound like you, then you've kind of lost your advantage there because I mean you lost your voice and whatnot. So
People hire people. People hire people they
yeah.
like, and if they don't know that if they don't know who you really are, how do they know they're gonna like you?
Hmm. No, for sure. Like, so in that sense, AI is a helpful tool, but you shouldn't over rely on it, right? And
Absolutely. I think we should use that as a general basis for all AI as the rest of the world goes.
yeah, that's good. That'll be our tagline now. Um, and that's kind of looking at we talked about we've talked about LinkedIn. We've talked about how to talk about your experience and like brag on yourself, brag on what you can do. But now let's kind of talk about the idea of upskilling. So like maybe fill in the gaps of things that you don't have, right? Like, and so what kind of role do you think? Because I think there's this tension between like you want to brag on yourself and what you can do, but there's also realization that there needs to be knowledge gained and skills gained to transition to that new role. So
Mhm.
how do you navigate that tension of like bragging on yourself and what you can do versus, but you're also still learning about this new thing?
Well, I think there's got to be the honesty in there for sure. And you utilize people like myself, utilize your own voice. There's so much
Mm.
power for an educator going around even recruiters. I know that sounds terrible, like don't use me. I'm not saying don't use me, but go around us in some senses because you have a connection with the company. When they come in and do your training, stay after and talk to the person if you're really excited. So I know some educators are like, oh, another training, goodness.
Yeah.
But some of you are like, oh my God, this is my favorite product ever. If it's your favorite product ever, and you're the one sitting there taking all the notes, and you're like, I want her job. I want to do
Mhm.
what she's doing. Stay after, ask her how she got her job, get the information for her manager. You never know. Um, I actually would see more educators connecting that way or at a conference more so than through direct recruiters only because you're selling you right then and there and you're like, "Oh
Yeah.
my god, I'm so excited." And they can see that.
Yeah.
So, any chance you get to meet someone face to face, if it's at a conference, go introduce yourself. If you're within your district and you don't have the opportunity to do that, do whatever you can within your district to beef up your resume. Like you said, offer to go do the training itself, offer to learn more and teach the other educators. Maybe see if there's an opportunity in your district to be the champion for that product or whatnot.
Yeah, I think I love that idea. Like, be a champion for that product, work with people, and then you can know that's experience you can then talk about in your resume and talk about that in that
And you
hiring
don't have to go
process.
to that company. I didn't mean to interrupt you. You can go to another company that then sees that you understand enough to go in and train district leaders or your other
Yeah,
peers.
it kind of on that lens, like for roles like customer success or client success support or sales, like what are realistic ways that educators can kind of gain that experience before like jump into the job. I think you hit on something of like, hey, try to be the head person in charge of the implementation. Like, what are some ways when it comes to sales roles and client success to kind of gain that experience, whether through courses, through things at your school location?
Well, you're in the right location. You're starting here at the Impact community. Um, So I would start there. I would definitely, I mean, like you said, and like we talked about championship within the district, but definitely go on to LinkedIn. There's some trainings on there as well. There's
Yeah.
trainings in the impact community, like we mentioned, depending on the avenue you want to take. There are things that you can still go learn that you're not trapped within your four walls of your school.
Yeah.
So there are other ways I would seek even outside of education. Get your experience in other ways. There's corporate trainers. There's things you can learn if you want to go into sales. There's inside sales roles. There's things in your community that could be part time to give you a taste of it to see if you love it or hate it. Maybe
Hmm.
you were an Avon salesperson back in the day and you sold all the Skin So Soft. Tell us about it and let's see if we can get a connection. Sometimes that's all
Nice.
you need is to just tell people, like, hey, I really like education, but I need to get out of the classroom and I think I could sell. So let's have a chat. It may not be fast. Be patient. Be patient
Yeah.
with us, be patient with you, and realize that this job market is a little woo.
Yeah.
So it doesn't always even make sense to us recruiters.
On that note, kind of what does the job market look like at the start of the year? Like, what are you seeing in hiring trends and people coming? What roles do you see kind of landing more?
It's an exciting year. Last year was like, what is happening? I mean, I expected that with a lot of the ESSER funding and such, but when there's concerns at the DOE and we don't know what's really happening, there's always concerns within the district. So the hiring goes along with that because
Hmm.
there's been a little bit more of a okay, we still have to purchase. That always happens in the district
Yeah.
level. There's always purchasing needed. You still have to take care of those students. You still have to take care of your educators. So eventually the purchasing comes back and the hiring comes back. And that's what we've seen in the last 2 quarters is all of a sudden we're starting to see more roles. Usually sales come first, which is what we're seeing. And then following sales are the customer support and the training, because once you sell, guess what you have to do? Make sure that those teachers are trained. So we're
Yeah.
probably going to see a pretty busy spring, I would imagine, and
Okay.
into summer's a little topsy turvy. It goes both ways. It slows down and then it picks up and then it slows down again. But we'll see a more customer success and training roles probably in the spring.
Okay. And just if you're just joining us, feel free to throw your questions in the chat, and we will make sure we get to those. Um, on that note, is if I'm a teacher in a role, right? Like I start at the beginning of the year, I end at June or May, and so if I was looking to leave, and like is spring summer a time where a lot of roles are open because that's like, or is that what's kind of the best time to start? Um, when is it more active and whatnot?
Send us your resume now
Okay.
because with your contracts, you have to make decisions before school actually starts.
Hmm.
So interview processes can take anywhere from the shortest one I've had in the last year was 7 days, I think. And the fastest or the longest one was 7 weeks.
Oh
So
wow.
is that typical? No, but can it happen? Absolutely. So get us your resume. Let's get started talking about your timeline. And if we have to, we wait to send your information in, but at least get it started now. Spring is
Yeah.
probably the best time to find spring
Okay.
and then going back into fall because the summer is hit or miss. They're hiring, but there's also a lot of folks off because
Hmm.
it's the summer.
And so would you say, you said it earlier, like, does the ed tech kind of hiring, like whether hiring a lot or not hiring, kind of mirror what schools are doing in that sense? So if schools are buying and there's lots of purchase power, maybe ed tech companies are hiring more. Do you see that kind of correlate?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Because there's a comfort level when there's purchasing happening, right? There's quotas
Yeah.
that need to be met, revenue numbers that need to be met. The more that revenue numbers are met, the more need for people to support the people that were sold to.
Yeah, that
So
makes sense.
we always see the hiring follow the funding.
That's good to know. I mean, that's a helpful insight for someone looking to transition into ed tech. Like that's a key thing to look at when you're reading the news or kind of seeing what's going on in education. That's like a helpful nugget right there. Um, what skills, again, 2026 stand out and are really like, is like skills around AI really like, whoa, like what kind of skills are ed tech companies looking for in 2026?
AI is definitely a big hot button. It's not going to go away as being a hot button, but translating as to what really is AI and what is not is going to be fun in the future. So definitely do that. Look at a lot of the mental health and mental well-being, because I think
Okay.
as our students deserve and as our adults deserve, that's a big focus going into the future. And so really understanding the support services and the technologies around that as well. And one thing I don't think we're ever going to get rid of, unless there's some future that I can't see, is the big student information systems, the big data systems for the districts. Those have to function for the
Yeah.
districts to kind of function as a whole. So anything related to LMS, ERP, you're going to see that continue to grow too, I feel like.
Learning those technical skills when it comes to all those information services.
SIS,
That's
yep.
key. It's the fun stuff, the fun part of being a teacher. um, and this is kind of a question that came in the chat as well, but it's one we actually had kind of on the docket. What are kind of the most common mistakes, the things you see educators make when applying to EdTech roles, that you would say, don't do this? Like, what are some of those common mistakes?
Um, the biggest thing I would say is don't get frustrated. It's an interesting market out there. There's Not every role is real.
Mm-hmm.
And that sounds really frustrating, but it can be frustrating for us too. What I mean by that is, do people have bad intents when they put roles out there? Heck no, they don't. But there are boards behind the scenes that say, put 15 positions out there, we're going to hire 5. Let's find the best people. Or the roles are out there to test the market to see where we're going to hire in a quarter.
Yeah.
So don't be frustrated. I think that's the biggest thing I see people do is they're like, forget it. I'm throwing my hands up. I'm over it. I'm not supposed to leave the classroom. I'm just stuck here. Well, no, you're not. Just give it time,
Yeah.
because that can be frustrating for folks that have 20 years of experience or 3 years of experience, or, you know, it's just the way of the world right now. So
Yeah.
the other thing is, don't count yourself out. I told you at the beginning, I'm an analogy person. I have a 13-year-old daughter, my only baby at home. Still, I have 3 kids, but I love to tell this story. She'll kill me. But she was like 4 or 5 years old. And for Christmas, she had her little Christmas wish list that she filled out. And I'm not kidding you. It said a real pony and a real fire truck, like the real one, not like a
Nice.
woo-woo we put in our house. So she did not get a real pony. Shocker. She did not get a real fire truck either. She got her Paw Patrol characters and everything else that was on
Nice.
her list. She was not disappointed at all. She never was like, where's my pony? Hiring managers, when they make their job descriptions, they all sit in a room now and they're like, put the pony on there. Maybe we'll get a pony.
Mm.
Put the fire truck too. Maybe we'll get a fire truck. We need to have the Paw Patrol character, but maybe we'll get those other things too. So when you're looking at a job description, if you hit 50% of it, apply. It's not going to hurt.
Mm.
If they ask you and they say, hey, you don't have a pony, how come you applied? Well, I have all these other things. I can get there on my bike.
Yeah. That's great. As a parent myself, that's some great advice. I'm not going to get my daughters a pony, so I'll take that. But I think that's important because, like, when you read a job description, like, you kind of measure it against yourself, right? And like
Yeah.
what you have and don't have. And I think it's easy to maybe get discouraged of like, I don't have that experience, right? I can't use that tool. But how would you say like educators then should talk about themselves when they only, let's say, match like 50% of the role? How then do you kind of fill the gap of the other 50? How do you talk about your experience in a way that stands out when you may not have everything on that list?
That's where the letter of intent comes in. And don't ignore the things you don't have. Don't highlight them. Don't be like, I don't have
Mm-hmm.
a pony. I don't have a fire truck. But don't ignore them either. I know you require XYZ. However, I have this in lieu of that.
Mm-hmm.
Or I feel like I'd be a fit instead because, and you may still not get a call. They may still say, we have to have someone with a pony. That's okay. Then you know you're not a fit, but it doesn't hurt if you don't try. And if it's something you're really excited about, give it a go.
No, that's great. And to wrap up, just any last thoughts on kind of anything you wanted to touch on that we didn't get to, of like any parting wisdom? You've shared a lot of insights, a lot of nuggets. Anything else you just want to share about, you know, transitioning out of the classroom into an ed tech role?
Remember why you got into this market. Like, my favorite thing about this market is that it comes from all of this passion. And I
Hmm.
say it often, and I think sometimes people that I'm talking to are like, whatever, Nikki, good gosh. But I went to a conference years ago, and management recruiters, we were part of management recruiters before. And it was a conference where everybody was up on stage and you're getting your awards and you were top recruiting office, blah, blah, blah. And this, I'm not kidding you, this group was up there and they're like so excited. And I was excited for them. I'm a keto girl. I eat cheese all the time. They were dairy farming recruiters. And they were so, and I just was sitting there looking at my team at the time when Brian was on the team. And I was like, I love cheese, but I don't think I could get as excited about dairy farming as I am with educators, because you are so passionate. If you make
Mm,
one change in a child's life, that's impacting them for the rest of their lives. And you're talking
yeah,
about 25, 30 kids every year that you could have an impact on, or more, depending on your role. So on this side of the house, then you're helping those educators, which are then helping the students. You're still taking that passion and using
yeah.
it. So use that as your fuel. So that's my biggest piece of advice.
No, I love that. And um, I do want to thank everyone for being here tonight. This was such a valuable conversation. So I thank you, Nikki, for dropping your wisdom on us. I feel like just sharing such clear and honest insight to how recruiters look at things, how hiring teams actually view K through 12 experience. A couple of key takeaways, I think, and we didn't even plan this, but you know, a lot of what we talk about in our community is like sharing your why, knowing your why. And I love how you hit on that of your why doesn't have to change, and that your why is kind of your North Star when you are discouraged. Like, remember the passion, remember why you got into this. Like, I think that's huge. And I think a key takeaway quote for me too is, if you don't, it's okay if you don't have a pony, right? You can still apply. Even if you don't have a pony, you can still bring a lot to the table. So,
Yeah.
and that's kind of this clarity you got from today's conversation is the type of clarity and confidence we help educators build inside the K through 12 impact community, and through our sales and client success academies. And so, if you're not already a part of a free community, we'd love to have you. The link will be in the description below. And we offer like a free 5-day academy for transition educators. So that's a great way to, it's designed to help you explore EdTech and see whether sales or client success roles will fit with you. Kind of going on what Nikki said of doing the research, slowing down, understand your why. And like, again, thank you, Nikki. And if you want to connect with Nikki or explore opportunities, please, you can send her your resume, your contact information, and ideal roles to admin at flagstaffed.com. We'll actually have that email in the video description. So send your resume, your contact information, ideal roles you're looking at. I think when I transitioned out of a classroom years ago, but I think I would have loved to have someone like you in my corner. And so that you are a great resource. So please reach out to her, and be sure to follow Flagstaff Ed on LinkedIn for current openings and insights. So thank you, everyone, for spending your Wednesday night with us. Hopefully it was insightful and helpful, and have a great night. We'll see you guys next time.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.